Hey men, welcome back to another episode of the Wolf and Iron podcast. You're listening to Truck Talk Thursday, and happy Truck Talk Thursday to you. I'm Mike Yarbrough. I'm the founder of Wolf and Iron, a site dedicated to helping men heed the high call on their lives, and you're listening to our podcast. We also have articles and a fantastic group of men, a great community of men over in our free Facebook group, and you can get there by going to wolfandiron.com/the group. Now slingshot you over to our Facebook group, where if you're not a member already, you can join for free. Just answer a few questions there, and we'll be glad to see you in there and start having some great conversations. Hey guys, before I jump into this, I did want to ask a favor, and that is, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you've been listening for some time and you've been getting something out of this, please head over and subscribe to the podcast. Share it with a friend, because you know there are other guys out there that need to hear this stuff. And take the time to leave a review. You know, all this stuff actually helps the podcast to get out in front of the guys that really need to hear it the most. And there's a good chance that you were one of those guys once, and somebody else doing just those things, share and subscribe and review, help to get out in front of you. So pay it forward, pay it back, however you want to think about it. I really appreciate that. So the title of the podcast episode is something along the lines of why we no longer plant pecan trees, or why do we no longer plant pecan trees? And if you're familiar with how I do things, I don't like to put stuff on the nose anyhow. And you're probably right in assuming that this podcast episode is actually not about pecan trees, although it has something to do with pecan trees. The subject came up like this. There's a book called Culture Care by Mako Fujimura, and it's a good little book. You guys should definitely check it out. It basically talks about how art ought to be thought of and should intersect with life, and there's just a number of different points. I can't make them all, but it's a book written by an artist, that's Mako, and it makes a number of points of thinking generally. That doesn't necessarily mean general as in every day, what have you, but as in generationally and generously, and then there's another one too I can't quite call to mind. But I was in a little book study club thing with some other people, and we were going over the book, and one of the ladies there said that people used to plant pecan trees for their grandchildren. And that just really struck me. The reason that she brought that up was, we're here in the South, I'm in Charlotte, and you can go by these old homes and see these pecan trees that are just, they got to be 75 or 100 years old, sitting out in front of these old houses. And one day you're driving by and you see the things just getting cut down, and it's just an absolute shame. And some apartment complex is going to go in, some kind of development is going to go in, and it's progress, right? But people used to plant these things for the grandkids. And the saying was, I talked to her afterwards, and she said, that what she always heard, and the saying was that you plant pecan trees for your grandchildren. Because the pecan tree takes several years to reach a certain level of maturity where it can produce any kind of amount of pecans. And I looked this up before I started recording this. It takes somewhere between 10 or 15 years for a pecan tree to reach a decent amount of maturity where it's actually dropping pecans that are worth anything. They can drop them earlier than that, especially if they're grafted. But if they're grown from a nut, then it's going to take a long time. And to see these really big, massive pecan trees that produce these awesome pecans, that may take 20, 30 years. And it was a great point, because it just struck me that our culture, by and large, does not think about the generations to come. We don't have it in our mind, and I'm not necessarily talking to you guys, because I really feel that the guys who listen to the Wolf and Iron podcast are a different breed. I think we've got a different mindset that's been developing for some time. But by and large, painting with a broad stroke here, our culture does not consider the next generations, the upcoming generations. When our national parks were put into place, I can't remember the exact creed, but it was something along the lines that these things would be, that these parks and these lands would be preserved and protected so that all of their glory, all of their splendor would be available and accessible for the generations to come, the generation after generation. And so Americans wouldn't just have to read about what our forest used to be like and the wildlife that roamed there and the incredible beauty that the first European American settlers, would experience when they came here, but that we'd actually get to be able to experience some of that ourselves. And so that was thinking generationally. And when our grandparents, our great-grandparents, went to war, and they're in World War II, they're in the Korean War, they're in Vietnam War, maybe, depending on your age, they did so knowing that there was hell coming to their very shores where they had started a life, and that it was not going to be just them, but their kids and their grandkids, and for generations to come. It was going to be hell in communism, socialism, whatever the case may be. And so they fought, and many of them died to protect us of that. A lot of us have had the experience of being raised around grandparents in that greatest generation. Whether or not they served in war or not, they still had this mindset that they wanted to give to their something. They wanted to have something left behind for the grandkids, right? Sometimes that was maybe a house that was paid for. Maybe it was some money that could be distributed amongst the kids once they died. Something to leave to the next generation. Maybe it was a pecan tree. Maybe it was an orchard. Maybe it was skills. Maybe it was a mindset. Maybe it was their book collection. Whatever it happened to be, guys. And you and I both know that sort of mentality has been going away for quite some time. The generation that was brought up in the 60s and the 70s really just pulled away from that. And it really became more about me, about what I think, about what I want, and not about the next generation. And it's a sad state of things, but it doesn't have to remain that way. And you guys know this. As men, as we begin to think about legacy, as we begin to think about what our life is going to mean to not just our grandkids who may know us, hopefully will know us, but maybe our great-grandkids and thereon who have never got a chance to meet us. You and I both realize that the way we live our lives, the way we conduct ourselves, the risks that we take, the choices that we make, is going to have a tremendous impact for generations to come. Now, whether they appreciate that or not, that's really on them. In similar ways, whether or not our generation really appreciates the sacrifices of those who came before us, some of us do, many people don't. It's really on that generation. But what does it say about you? Where are you trying to leave a legacy? Where are you planting the metaphorical, or maybe even the very practical, the very real, figurative, or otherwise, pecan trees in the lives of other people? Maybe this is your grandkids that you're setting things up for. Maybe it's your own kids that you're setting things up for. Guys, this doesn't happen by accident. I mentioned this, I believe, in the past episode. If you want to be different than the way you see other men living their life and the legacies that you see other guys leaving behind, you're going to have to make some changes. You're going to have to be purposeful. And, I think it's helpful even if you can imagine your grandkids, your great-grandkids walking out onto an old piece of property, and they see this great pecan tree grown up, and they're going to go there, they're going to pick them. They're going to pick some pecans and take them in. It's something maybe they just got raised with, something they got raised doing. Imagine if nobody ever told them that great-grandpa, whatever your last name is, planted this pecan tree for them. There'd be a loss to that, I believe. I think in doing these things and in planting the seeds that are really going to take place and benefit those several generations down the road. I think in letting them know that that was our intent, it really combats this right now immediate satisfaction mindset that's so prevalent in a society like ours. I think it gives to them something of a very real way of understanding that they're benefiting from the thoughts of them existing in generations past. You know, guys, when we make decisions, we need to let people know why we're making those decisions. I think it starts with our kids, right? Doesn't matter what age they are. I think it's important for them to know, hey, look, I'm doing this so that you might have something to appreciate. I'm not talking about pecan trees for sure, but I'm talking about whatever it happens to be. I'm teaching you these skills, son or daughter, so that when you become a parent or you become a grandparent, you have these things to pass down to your children. I'm telling you these stories so that you have them to tell to your children. I'm teaching you these things. I'm giving you these things. I'm setting aside these funds for you so that when I die, you have something not only to remember me by, perhaps, but you understand the importance of thinking generationally, of thinking of years to come, of knowing that you're not going to be around forever, and that one day you're going to meet your maker. Other people will come to take what you have. That is, if you have anything to take. And what kind of impact is it going to make? Is your life going to have made for the generations that are yet to be born? So where are you guys planting pecan trees? Let me know. You know, a great place to have these conversations, to kind of dialogue on some of these things that come up every week on Thursday is over in our free Facebook group. Once again, that's wolfandiron.com/the-group. I want to see you guys over there. I want to have these conversations. I want to know what you guys are doing to plant the pecan trees for the next generations. All right, I appreciate you guys. That's enough truck talk for today. We'll talk to you later.